Welcome to Simply Sarah. I'm Sarah Stock. I'm your host, and I am so glad that you are here. Thank you. We are grateful that you are carving time out of your schedule to take in this important information, to listen to this conversation, to allow it to form some of your thoughts about upcoming conversations you may be having. And in this space, we also want to say thank you to our paid sponsors for glassartscollective.com, for Reiki Claremont, and also from Stressed to Best. And as Melissa comes and joins us, Melissa, we are so glad that you are here. Kelli Melissa Reinhardt. I know your name. I'm sorry.
You're good. You're good. I think it's always like the Kelly's smaller than the Melissa. So, it's fine. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Your show, Make Mental Health Matter, is just touching people's lives around the world. How did you decide to have your own television show, to be your own host, and to take this message in such a powerful way?
I actually started my show in 2021. I took a class that was Be on TV boot camp. And
Awesome.
I was like, I don't think I ever really want to be a public speaker. I don't think I want to do any of that. And then through this mastermind that I was a part of, I noticed that there was an opportunity, and I had started my nonprofit, which is Make Mental Health Matter nonprofit. It's a mental health and suicide awareness nonprofit. And I started it in 2018 after I lost my middle sister to a completed suicide in 2017. And I, again, had a mentor over time that said that public speaking is the way to go. And I never, ever, ever in a million years thought that that would be the thing. But in 2021, I was like, hey, might as well. Let's do that and see how it works out. Went live on YouTube and Facebook and decided that I was going to just keep it going. I had some really amazing guests. We're talking about hard conversations around mental health and suicide awareness and all the things. And then moved into E360 TV a year and a half ago, and then added radio this year. So
such an incredible journey. How have you been able to ground yourself through all of this? Because you are talking about tough things on a consistent basis.
I love showcasing other stories. Really, truly, the show is not about me. Every once in a while, I'll do a solo show just when certain things are coming. Like I did one for National Suicide Prevention Month and one for Recovery Month. But otherwise, it's just been a really amazing journey to showcase other people's stories versus my own, but then also giving tips and tools. And because most people that I have on my show are now experts in the field of wherever they've been. And so it's really great to have them on to even get tools and tricks for myself. That's been a really big part of the journey.
Kelli, I have to agree with you that has been such a powerful point for me as well, is to hear other people's ideas and thoughts about the topics, and then finding that those are showing up in my own life in really positive ways. So it's not just for our guests that we do this, but there's also this space for ourselves that we get to expand and learn and just see the world through different eyes. And it's such a powerful, powerful place. What are your hopes and dreams and desires for the message that you are powerfully sharing?
My ultimate goal really of the whole show is to give people resources. Ultimately, in this thing that we call life, there are lots and lots of resources across the world, knowing that mental health is a global challenge. I mean, we all have mental health, it's our brain, but we don't all have mental illnesses or disorders or challenges, whatever you want to call them. But really knowing that you're not alone, and there are other people that have been through similar experiences and have found this place that they're able to now help others. And that's really the whole point. Like, I bring mental health professionals, somebody with lived experience that can just start to change the conversation and ultimately give those people resources no matter where you live in the world. And that's pretty cool.
I think one of the pieces for me is to understand that around the world, people look at the whole thing very, very differently. Born and raised in Africa, spent time often in the summers going through England, having a beautiful connection there for lots of different reasons, and just noticing how they seem to champion or have conversations about mental health in different ways than in America. It seems to still be for many people a topic that is difficult to have conversations about. What do you see being some of the positive things that are changing here in America with that and around that?
I think it's just the conversation in general, right? We weren't talking about it before, and there's so much stigma that it's like, oh, I can't, it's like your hidden secret. Like, I can't talk about that. Somebody's gonna label me, or they're gonna think that something's wrong with me, or I'm crazy, right? We hear that word often. But now we're actually having the conversation, which is amazing. We also have to be really aware of how we're having those conversations and authentically just showcase, hey, I've been through this, and there is this place of hope that I can get to. I don't have to feel stuck in whatever's happening. And I think that's part of the good thing that's happening. Mental health is like the buzzword, right? But I think the difference, especially at least with my nonprofit, is that it's make mental health matter, because we're trying to make it matter. We're trying to put that action behind it, which is really truly the conversation and the education. And I know there are lots and lots of other nonprofits out there that we love to collaborate with that are really changing this conversation and doing something about it. And that's what I think is the best part, really, about America, and I mean globally, right? Like there are lots and lots of countries that are probably doing it a little bit better than us, but I think we can also learn and take on some of those even in the United States. And I think we really truly are trying, and there's just a lot more that we need to work through.
Were there warning signs for you as a sibling watching what was taking place? I guess I'd love for you to talk about the sibling aspect of it, because so many of us are siblings, or cousins or aunts, uncles to people who are struggling and who may or may not be open to a conversation. What have you found to be kind of the safety net, or whatever you're comfortable sharing with that, Kelli?
Yeah, and I am 100% open book. I talk about it all the time, but I didn't have the skills that I have today, of course, but looking retrospect, my sister actually had attempted suicide 6 other times, and our family we were kind of in this cycle of my sister would call, we would know, we would get the police or whomever out there, we'd get her stomach pumped, she'd go on a 72-hour hold. At one point in time, she actually went into a mental health facility, and it felt like she was just telling them exactly what they needed to hear to let her go. And I know, at least for me, I shut my emotions off really towards the end. Is I didn't know how to help her anymore. And I didn't know how to help myself. I also was a new mom, and I had to take care of my son. I had to take care of myself. And it was a 5-year period between the last time we knew she attempted till the point she completed. And I now, again, retrospect, I see my sister unraveling. She was very upkept. Every single family event we had, she'd have her hair done, her makeup done, she'd wear nice clothes. And the Christmas before she passed, because she passed in February, she looked very tired. She looked very, like, her hair was all over the place. It just wasn't my sister. And interestingly enough, I don't have any pictures of her from that Christmas. And that's not normal. I mean, I had pictures of all the rest of us, but I didn't from her. And maybe it was in my head, like, I was like, oh, she kind of looks like she doesn't look very good, right? So I didn't take pictures, but it's noticing those small changes, whether it's hygiene or it is maybe pulling themselves out of certain situations that they normally would, or they're giving away things, or they're sending people away, or they're starting, like she started having arguments with all the people that were closest to her. I mean, our oldest sister, they got into a ginormous fight months before this and they weren't even talking. And so she was already starting to like push all the people away that were the closest to her, but none of us knew really what was going on. And so those are some of the main things that I tell people. And then the other thing is mood changes. So if you have those extreme highs or lows, we all have a baseline of who we are on a normal basis. But if we're having really high highs, then we drop into the low, or vice versa. We have a really low period, then all of a sudden we're really, really happy. Those are the shifts that we often miss the most, especially as we talk about suicide, is that they may actually have a plan at this point and they're comfortable with really what they have decided to do. And I think, especially as we talk about, not that my sister was a youth, she was 43, but even with youth, like those are certain things that we miss the most often, because the people closest to you are generally the hardest to help and spot, because you become conditioned to the normal everyday, and we don't often pay attention to that. So these are from the lens of what I know now, with lots of certification, lots of education, but that's the part that we really give back, is the education piece, so that you can start to identify and notice those things before it's too late.
Yeah. We're going to take a super quick break. When we come back, I would love for you to talk about sleep, because you mentioned that, how important sleep is in this whole piece. We'll be right back. Glass Arts Collective is doing something so fun and amazing. Believing that all of us are creative, they are opening up their Instagram page for people who are creating things to be able to post those things there. I also believe that you are creative, and I'm super excited about this opportunity to be supporting Glass Arts Collective. They are amazing. Do you like and admire the version of you that shows up under stress? From the point that we feel stressful circumstances show up in our life, there is about a 10-second window that we have to be able to not just manage, but prevent stress. And it's called the 10-second solution. If you are interested in more information about how you can prevent stress, I invite you to go to my Instagram. The handle is @SarahStockham, and go to the bio and sign up right now. Your future you deserves this information. You can actually have a great relationship with stress. Sign up now @SarahStockham. I am so grateful to have Kelli Melissa Reinhardt in studio today. This is a conversation I've been wanting to have for a really long time. Kelli, the space of sleep, how important is sleep? We seem to be getting less and less of it. And then I hear that you can't make it up on the weekends. And how important is it for our mental health and for our full being?
It's really, really important. Not that I am a sleep expert by any means, but the mind and body are connected, therefore they affect each other. And when I say that, what I mean is that if our brain, so again, our brain is our mental health. We all have a brain. We don't all have a challenge or disorder, but when you're not getting good, restful sleep, then it triggers everything in your body, which can ultimately show up in physical ailments. It could show up in mental health challenges. There's so many things that are linked to our brain and sleep. And again, it's restful sleep. It's not just, like I'm getting up to go to the bathroom every hour or every couple hours.
Yes.
It's really, the brain needs to be fully rested to be able to function, because it runs our whole entire body. And when we don't have enough sleep, then again, it just shows up in all different other ways. And so if you're having body pain, if you're having physical challenges that are showing up, if you are maybe now feeling a little bit sad or depressed, or maybe you're having more anxiety than you normally do, I would check in with your sleep first, because that may be one of the components of what's happening. And if you aren't able to get that, I mean, under control, right? But if you're not able to really start to have sound sleep, then we can get you, at least my nonprofit, what we do is connect people into resources. And we have lots of sleep experts that I have also had on my show, and it's very much linked to your body and your brain, your sleep.
I know somebody who's a registered dietitian, and she talks about people who are wanting to lose weight, that if they're not getting enough sleep, it becomes very, very difficult to do that. And I just thought, how fascinating. You know, if we're trying to get more done, and you would think with all that activity of trying to get more done, it would be, you know, change things with our body. But the sleep is the bottom, that underlying component that goes all the way through, that's so important for us. You started a nonprofit. Do you have people in your life who were your examples, or was this something that you just realized one day that was something that you wanted and needed to do?
I actually was helping. So prior to my sister passing, I was helping another nonprofit who really focused on the youth, more so like adolescent suicide, also just the choking game. And I was helping them prior to my sister. And it was something I thought would be a really great partnership with, they did youth and we did adults, since my sister was an adult. But I don't know why I was like, I want to start a nonprofit. But I did know the one thing was that I wanted to help one person. Even if it was one person, I did my job. And I had no idea what I was doing, starting a business, starting a nonprofit. But I just knew that what I needed to do was something. I had to change something that was happening. And I had lost a cousin years before my sister to suicide. And then actually her brother died by an overdose or substance abuse. And it hadn't, because I was so young, it wasn't something that I had connected until my sister passed, that I was like, we got to change this. Like, something's got to change. Like, I need to get better myself to be able to help others. And that's when I was telling you about the mentor earlier. He challenged me. He was like, so what does it take to start a nonprofit? How much does it take? What do you need? And I was like, well, this and this and this. He's like, all right, I'm going to challenge you. You do it in 24 hours. I was like, okay, challenge accepted. And that's how it began. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I'm going, how this is going to look, but I know that I need to help people in a bigger way, bigger than myself. And that's how it really started. And now we're in our 6th year, which is really, really cool.
So beautiful. In that space of starting this nonprofit, wanting to get resources out to people and connect people, are you finding that you're doing much more of it online, or are you doing a lot more of it in person?
So it's a mixture, to be honest, because our classes are virtual. We do everything virtual because we are able to train on a national level across the US. A lot of people they're kind of over Zoom and the virtual aspect. However, we also have other classes that are in person. We also do community events, and it has been scientifically proven that connection and community are two things that can ultimately save lives. And then you add the education component in there of, hey, how do we start noticing these things before it becomes an issue and or they choose to take their life? Right. And so we do a little mixture of both, because we know how beneficial it is to have in person, the full connection, the community to back you up. But then we also know that people are very, very busy, and we can reach more of an audience when we have our classes virtually, which we have. I think I've trained almost everybody not everybody, but I've trained somebody in each state, which is really, really cool.
In 6 years? Yeah, that's fantastic. That's a beautiful thing. How do you find this changes your family conversations, your family dynamics? You saying this is something that we are no longer going to ignore. We're going to look at this. We're going to have open conversations about this, at least that you were open to it, whether others are or not. What are you seeing as the differences there?
There, this is probably the biggest area where I see the most difference because I have a 9-year-old and I never, ever thought that we would be having the conversations that we have now. I mean, he was probably 4 when we talked about gun safety, and I did not expect that as a parent. He knows, yeah, it's very important. He knows what I do. He comes and he helps at all the events that we do now. He actually most recently we do an annual film festival every year, and he just came this last weekend, which was really cool because he's finally getting to the age that I feel comfortable him really having the open conversation and seeing different ways to talk about mental health and suicide. And I just hadn't ever imagined that this would be what I was doing and or having the open, honest conversations that I needed, because that it wasn't something that I grew up with, right? It was
Right.
very hush hush. It was, we don't really talk about it that often, and you just keep going. It wasn't a topic of conversation. We also didn't have a lot of the things, right? Technology wasn't a thing. We
Exactly.
we had pagers, we didn't have tablets, we didn't have cell phones when we were growing up. We could leave our bullies at school and pick them up the next day. We
Yeah.
didn't have it following us with the cell phones. So kids just have so much more that they're having to work with or deal with. And so you have to, as a parent, if you're not talking to them, somebody else is. And
Yes.
I promise you, my son has asked me about things that I'm like, where did you get that? And I'm like, okay, we're having this conversation. So I just have always been open, transparent, letting him know that I'm a safe space for him to come. I may not be that trusted person, and that's okay. I know that I am, but I may not be. And that sometimes is a hard pill to swallow as a parent, but it's important for us to know that somebody in their life they trust, and hopefully they're having conversations with them. And as a parent, we're opening up those conversations. We're not, you know, adding to the stigma and saying, no, let's not talk about this. Let's talk about it. Because again, if we're not as parents, then they're going to hear it from somewhere else. And that translates into my family also. I'm in a very different place for healing than most of my family is, but I also talk about this on a daily basis. And so I understand that my journey is very different,
Mhm.
and that's okay. And we can have open, honest, transparent conversations, but I don't need to like impose my beliefs on my family because they're just in a different place, and that's all right.
Kelli, that is so amazingly powerful what you just shared. This idea that we can be in a different place than the other members of our family, and that we don't need to impose on them our beliefs or the ahas that we've had or this deep understanding in a particular area. Such freedom, such freedom to be able to be and to not have to be imposing.
Yeah.
I'm just soaking that one in. Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. As you are having the opportunity, because you do have your own child who has friends who are going to have conversations and that you're, all those kinds of things. Have you found that other parents are coming to you and saying, would you, or school districts coming to you and saying, hey, we'd love to have a little bit more conversation about what you're doing and how you can be accessing more classrooms? Are you finding that it's moving from the nonprofit people seeking and trying to find you to other larger groups coming to you and saying, here's a larger audience, would you please share with them?
So schools have actually been one of our biggest challenges, public schools specifically.
Yes.
They're very they want to have like their curriculum, the people within their district that do things. The outside sources, I guess, they're not really wanting to bring in on certain levels.
Right.
Although I feel like it has gotten a little bit better and they're starting to kind of search out different things to be able to help. But generally, it's after an incident happens. It's
Yes.
not very proactive, which is really what I'm trying to accomplish with my nonprofit, is that proactive versus reactive.
Right.
I have had many, many, many people that follow me, people that have been my friends that know what I do. They often reach out to me and ask, "Hey, what do I do? Who do I talk to? How do I have this conversation?" And it is something that I did put on our website, just some tips of do's and don'ts of what to talk about, how to have the conversations. Of course, just small snippets of things that I have gotten over the last 6 years from people that know what I do. I actually have one family specifically that often reaches out to me just because they're having a lot of challenges in the school district with kids that are suicidal. And so they, for whatever reason, they kind of like draw those people in. And so we're having a lot of conversations as related, hey, where do I go? Who do I talk to? How do I help them? And that's where I know that what I'm doing, whether I'm close to these people or not close to them, they feel comfortable enough to reach out and just ask. And I think that's
Yes.
the first step, is how do we ask
Mhm.
without having to feel bad, right? Or how do we ask for help when we're not really sure how to ask for help? And that's okay. It can be messy. And I think that's the best part about kind of what we do is we're good with the mess. Come to me in a mess and be like, "I don't know what I'm doing. How can you help me? This is what's going on." And I always want to get people to resources that are going to be helpful and not hurtful. That's when
Yes.
my big goals and things that I always make sure is that I'm never going to refer somebody in somewhere that I have heard bad reviews or I've heard
Right.
negative. I always want it to be helpful. So,
Yes.
um, yeah, I have just noticed that schools have been harder. Charter and private are a little bit more flexible and open and willing to
Mhm.
try new things. We are, however, still really attempting to get into that population of youth because for whatever reason, I keep getting drawn back to middle school, and they are the ones that need the resources the most. They're the ones that they all the things happen, right? Like we have the hormones, they're getting
Yes.
older. Middle school, if you ask anybody, they say it was the worst experience for me. So we're trying to really help that demographic. And we're in the current process of redesigning our Give Youth a Voice program, which is specifically designed for middle school students. And we're hoping to launch that in the next year and really start to hone in on helping youth before we get to adulthood and everything follows us.
Mhm. I love that space of being proactive rather than being reactive. And having been a classroom teacher for over 3 decades, there's definitely a space that I now understand that education is a business and that they are very concerned about lawsuits and that kind of thing. And so I understand that part of it. But there has to be a way for us to be able to have a broader space of conversations about things that are difficult. And I don't have the answer for that, but I keep listening, knowing that there are people who are very wise, who are very much in this, doing the work that you are doing, trying to help people who are in the higher levels of education to say, we need to be proactive. We need to start having some vocabulary that is agreed upon, that's acceptable for us to be able to talk about in classrooms or in other situations. Um, and I know that I guess I'm just thinking back for myself that there had been successful ones when my daughter was going to high school. And the way that they would choose to say, okay, they let the parents know this is something that's taken place in our community. It's a very tight-knit community. And then, these quads are going to be open for people who want to make signs or who want to bring in balloons or who want to whatever. This is the space for that. These other quads are going to be business as usual. And so trying to kind of give, and then having all the people come on campus who would be available, and phenomenal people coming on campus just to be able to available for conversations and that kind of thing. But there's so much that goes on in these middle schools and high schools that's about community, and helping people to, because there is so much movement in our country for whatever reason, and it can be difficult, just to be able to come in if you're from the outside and come into a school and to be able to become part of something and to be there. And if you are tops in athletics or music or drama and they happen to have that, or science and they have a great lab, those will be easier spaces. But for people who are seeing the world through very quiet eyes and seeing things heart first and academia second, it can be a pretty harsh place, pretty harsh space to be learning educationally, but also socially, emotionally as well.
Yeah, it's hard. I know my mom was a music teacher and she actually taught me from 3rd to 5th grade. And we've had lots of conversations about education and how it can be so challenging, especially, looking at my son, and they have very large classes and there's only one teacher, and they spend more time with our kids than we do half the time. And I think it starts with the health and well-being of our teachers. I think that's where we're not focused enough, right? Because they have a lot that they have to do. They have very strict things that they have to follow. And I think we're not giving enough credit where credit is due, because that's where we should start, is the health and well-being of the teachers. And then how do we train them? Although I know all of them are very highly educated themselves, but how do we train them around safe self-care? How do we train them, like you just said, having the proper words that we use? How do we bring it to a place that we are creating a calm and safe environment for them so that they can create that calm and safe, supportive environment for our kids to learn? And I think it's hard. There's a balance, like you were saying, is that we have so many things that are happening now with technology and all the school shootings, and like safety and security is a challenge, or it feels like it's a challenge, right? And so I think that we need to start with the well-being of our teachers, which I think ultimately translates into the well-being of our kids. So
what new teachers are being asked to do is, in so many situations, we're just asking them to be superhuman. And when I was a beginning teacher support and assessment mentor, I remember sitting with a brand new teacher who was incredibly powerful and good at what she was doing and just had wisdom beyond her years. And as we were, looking at student work and having conversations, she just seemed to be not as connected as other times. And so I said to her, what's going on? And she said, can we just talk? And I said, sure. And she said, I haven't had time to have groceries in the house. I don't have a clean anything to wear tomorrow for school. That's all I can think about, is how can I possibly take care of myself? And it was such a pivotal moment for me as a mentor to realize that, we were coming in with these stacks of things that needed to have check marks and people sign off and, dated and all the rest of that. And that we had somehow forgotten that these were beautiful human beings that had lives that needed to have, food in the fridge and clean clothes to wear, and demanding so much of them. And that was really a key conversation for me. She changed for me how I mentored after that. And just so grateful for her being open, being vulnerable, to say those things. And I think that the community that the particular school has that the administration helps to create, but that the teachers who've been there for a long time are also working and creating, that can be something that's, if they allow new teachers. Again, we talked about, people moving who are in middle school and high school, but we have new teachers coming in because we have such a group of teachers who are retiring for whatever reason. Some of them are in their 30s and they're saying, thank you, I'm going to go do something else. So as we have new teachers come in, there can be so much turnover that we need to be also, I think, giving people some grace with that. And yes, we want our children to be educated and rigorously, right? We want that so much for them, but to also see that there are multiple components to what's going on. What did you notice through the shutdown and afterwards about this topic of mental health?
Oh gosh. I'm like, that's a very big question, but I noticed really, well, one, humans are not conditioned to be isolated. And there was also this big conversation about safer at home, and not everybody's safer at home. Whereas, like, when we're talking about the schools, right? Like, that may be the safe space that these
Personally,
kids have. Yeah. And now it's all shut down, or maybe it's the only way that they're able to eat nourishing food. And there's a lot of different components that I think that we just forgot about, especially during that time, and everybody became really fearful of what was to come because all we saw was numbers and the negative, and it sent people into spirals. I had a friend that said to me at one point in time, I have to go to the grocery store every day or I'm going to kill myself. That's what she said to me. And I said, then go to the grocery store every day.
get
Do
out of
what
that.
you
Yeah,
Yeah, do what you need to do. That's okay. I'm not judging you. And if somebody starts to judge you, remember, those grocery workers have to go to work every single day.
right.
So do what you need for your mental health. And I think that, especially we were saying with the teachers, is that we do a new teacher orientation every single year, and they have at least 300 to 400 new teachers in one district every single year. We've been doing it for 3 years. Actually, I think we were on our fourth this year, but every single year they're bringing in that many teachers. The cool part about this year is I noticed they had a whole entire block of psychologists and mental health professionals, which
Yes.
was really amazing to see them come through, that they're adding those into schools. I mean, psychologists mainly, not just counselors,
Right.
not just people that can help, right? They're bringing in the psychologists.
Yes.
And I think that will help to translate for the kids, but then also for the teachers.
Mhm.
And as we roll into, because most of the kids that are now the younger generation, they only knew COVID times, right? They only knew the shutdown times. Of course, it was fun to be at home and do things online, but some of them are now having delays because it wasn't hands on, and it's hard to grasp when you're always virtual. And I think we're just barely starting to see the things that are coming out of the whole shutdown, because I mean, like the mental health challenges,
Right.
because anxiety got really high. We
Mhm.
started going into fight or flight a lot more often.
Yes.
And now our bodies maybe are starting to regulate, but it takes
Mhm.
time. We can't constantly be in fight or flight for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, right? Like in Europe, they were completely shut down for years. Like they couldn't do anything. And so I think we're just now at the tipping point
Mhm.
of really truly seeing how that affected us.
Mhm.
And I don't know what the answer is by any means, but I do believe that conversations like this is going to really be helpful, because people know that they're not alone, and whatever you experienced or whatever you're still experiencing is very, very valid. And it is absolutely okay to go get help even years later,
Yes.
as you start to feel the effects or notice whatever's happening within you or somebody else that you're really close to. it's okay to still go and get that help. And you never know, like everybody experiences things differently. And so if we're not feeling right, then go ask for help. Or maybe if you notice somebody in your life is not feeling right, check it out.
Ask a question or two, and they may or may not be willing to talk, but at least you will have opened the door to let them know that you're available.
Yes.
And put it in just a powerful place with that. Kelli, if you were to be able to have a magic wand in your business and do one thing, what would that one thing be?
Oh, like one thing.
You don't
what is it?
Particulars, do you?
I really truly, I mean, if I had a magic wand, it would really be I'm very much of a visionary, so I know exactly where I want to go. And my ultimate goal really is our first goal is to educate 1 million people by 2030. That's one of our big goals. But my really like big, longer scale goal is to leave this as a legacy. Because even after I'm gone, I would hope that it would continue to be part of the conversation. And I would hope that the board, whomever is at that time, will continue to know that being proactive versus reactive and the education piece is such a critical part, that I can really truly just leave this as a legacy, whether it be for my family or, all the next generations, that because it's not going to stop, right? Mental health is always going to be a part of our life. I am more than sure that unfortunately suicide is always going to be a part of our lives. And so the more that we can just really open the conversation and break down that stigma, I think that legacy can live on for sure.
Yes. Do you find that there are that getting outside makes a difference for people, the amount of time that they spend outside for their mental health? Have you noticed a correlation there?
There is. So scientifically, I'm going to go two ways with this. So scientifically, it has been proven that oxygen, like clean oxygen to our brains, is very good for our bodies. Being outside in nature, a lot of people talk about grounding, which is like putting your feet on the ground, in the grass, like being one with the earth and really soaking up that energy. It is and has been scientifically proven that it is helpful. I'm going to go the other side, is that I have also had people that have been in a place of struggle, and they're like, if another person tells me to go take a walk, I'm going to punch them.
Yes.
So I always caveat this with what works for you, do that. However, isolating yourself in a location that has circulating air and never getting that fresh air can be harmful for your brain. So it is beneficial to get outside. Of course, it depends on where you live, right? If you're in a city that is smog ridden, it's going to be a very different experience. So I would highly recommend that you get to more open space. Luckily, I live in Colorado. We have lots of open space. There are mountains that we can go climb or look at. Right. Not necessarily have to climb, but I am at an advantage that we do have a lot of open space in our state, and I don't live right in the heart of Denver. So I am or have the availability of a little bit better air quality. Yes. But those, I mean, depending on where you live, it may not be safe to go outside. It might be safer to stay inside, but it has been scientifically proven, at least for our brain, that we need to not isolate ourselves, and the circulated air is actually not good for us. So any opportunity that we can get out and about, whatever that looks like for you, is going to be beneficial. But I also, again, I know people that are struggling. They say, I don't want to go outside. I don't want to do anything.
Yeah.
And that's okay for now. But
Yes.
I highly recommend and challenge you to get yourself out and start to shift your state, which is, I mean, our body physically,
Right.
so that it can start to shift that
Mhm.
negative maybe cycle that you're stuck in. Try
Yes.
something new.
Yeah.
Even if it's one step at a time, getting out of your bed. Maybe the next step is, going downstairs or upstairs or wherever you might be. Maybe it's just opening the door. Maybe it's stepping out the door.
Mhm.
Maybe it's taking a few steps, right? Like whatever those small steps are,
Yes.
try those so
Mhm.
that you can get to the point that you can get out and start to change those cycles that you might be in.
I would add to that to become aware of the time of day that you prefer to be outside. And it's not always easy because of scheduling. But I remember recovering from a surgery and just thinking, oh, if I could just sit outside, it would feel good. And went outside and the sun was incredibly intense. And I was like, oh, I think I would feel better inside, right? What I was looking for was that morning sun, that just the gentleness of the sunrise kind of a thing, or perhaps maybe more of a sunset. And just to be aware that your eyes may feel different. You may see things differently when you're in those places of lower energy or uh, depression. Just to be aware of that, those are pieces of that as well. I'm loving this conversation. Um, as you think about where you are and your legacy and what you are working on, are there things that people who are listening in that if they could offer something to you or to what you are working on, is there a way that for them to get a hold of you and say, hey, we do this thing, or it needs to obviously be something that's scientifically based and needs to be something that would be helpful. But are you open to other people reaching out to you to expand this conversation?
Absolutely. I mean, I know you already mentioned I have my own show, which is called Make Mental Health Matter. Always looking for guest people resources. I
Mhm.
don't know everything. I am one that I'm very open to learning and knowing and seeing how I can collaborate and connect with people. I love having those conversations. We also have what's called a trusted resource hub, which are people, places, organizations, businesses that are really helpful in the mental health space. But there's also a lot of other things that we do. So the show is a great space, our trusted resource hub. And then lastly, we have a Warrior for Mental Health monthly donor program. So if you are somebody who wants to just support what we're doing, and all the funds go back into our programs,
Mhm.
and it's only $19 per month, and that supports all of our programs, which is education, conversation, and we do a lot of awareness campaigns. And so if that speaks to your heart, those are the best ways. But if you're needing resources and you are somebody that's out there struggling, you can always reach out to us. We have a whole list of people that can help, and if we can't help, most of the time we can find somebody that is willing to help.
Yes. Oh, that's just so, so good. This is a question that somebody posed to me at one point, and I thought that's kind of an interesting question. So we're going to kind of change pages just here a little bit. But if you were to have a conversation with somebody who possibly is alive today, but doesn't have to be, possibly from this century, but doesn't have to be, um, who would that conversation be with, and why would you choose that person?
Oh my gosh, I'm trying to think. I I mean, I generally go back to, um I'm trying to think who it would be necessarily. I'm, like, thinking, like, way back, uh,
Mhm.
I guess just really understanding. I don't know who it would be necessarily, um, but I think it's somebody who Well, okay, I'm gonna just go with what's popping into my head because that's fine.
Do it. Yeah.
Um, so the one that popped into my head is Rosa Parks. I don't know why, but she was such a powerful woman that started this movement of women also really around the slavery times and changing the conversation. And I, at least that's the one that I recall, like reading the book and hearing all about her story and how it shifted history, which I think is just incredible because she wasn't going to give up on herself, right?
Right.
She needed what she needed at that time, no matter what her skin color was or where she was sitting. And I think she always has sparked a little bit of interest in me of understanding what she went through, what her experience was, and that pivotal moment that she literally changed history and how that felt for her being able to be a part of that. And I think it'd be really cool now to
Mhm.
have that conversation for her to kind of see like how history really changed and shifted. And yeah, that's interesting that she popped into my head, but it's all about that conversation and changing the history and opening up the space that we didn't think was possible before.
Yes. Oh, that is so powerful. Yes. Are there things that you want to reiterate, friend?
I would just say if you are somebody out there that is truly struggling, I want you to know that you really, really are not alone. I know that we say that a lot in society today, but wholeheartedly, I want you to know you're not alone. There are many people, not just myself, not just Sarah, but so many people out there that really, truly want to help. Sometimes it's just hard to know where to go, who to talk to, how to get to that space. But I promise you, there are people, including myself, that really want to help guide you into that space. And if you do need resources, you can always reach out to us at my nonprofit. It's makementalhealthmatter.org. You can also be a part of our trusted resource or come on my show too.
So wonderful. Wonderful. Kelly, have an incredible rest of your day. Thank you so much for carving out time for this important conversation. We so appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. And to our audience, we just say thank you so much for investing time in yourself. Each one of these conversations is really a gift to you for you to be able to think through different areas of your life, to see if things are where you want them to be. And if not, to know that there are steps that you can take, that you have agency, that you can take that next step. It doesn't need to be a huge leap. Just a step in the right direction is all. And it's just such an important thing. We are so grateful for you being here. Until next time.